for the headlines.
A decades-long push to halt the violence that has claimed some 150 lives in the southern Philippines culminated Monday with a vote on giving the nation's Muslim minority greater control over the region.
China's economy grew at its slowest pace in almost 3 decades in 2018, losing more steam in the last quarter as it battles a massive debt pile and a U.S. trade war.
Israel says it struck Iranian targets in Syria overnight after having intercepted a rocket fired from Syria that it blames on Iran, leading to concerns of a further escalation in tensions.
An unusual set of celestial circumstances came together over Sunday night, and the wee hours of Monday for sky watchers in Europe, Africa, and Americas, where the moon was fully obscured before lighting up again with a faint red glow.
Mga Angeles, wherever you're watching from around the world, thank you very much for joining us.
We welcome our viewers here in the Philippines and around the world. Good evening, everyone. I'm Sam Cepeda.
And now to the news. Polls opened in the southern Philippines island of Mindanao on a vote to give the nation's Muslim minority greater control over the region. A decades-long push to halt the violence that has claimed some 150,000 lives in the southern Philippines culminated Monday with a vote giving the nation's Muslim minority greater control over the region. The poll is the final step in a peace deal with the country's largest Muslim rebel group, the MILF, or the Moro Islamic Liberation Front, which has been a key force in a separatist insurgency that has raged since the 1970s. Core areas of the proposed Bangsamoro region located in the southern island of Mindanao are expected to vote overwhelmingly to join it. Roughly 2.8 million voters will be watched over by a contingent of 20,000 police and soldiers. Amid fears, rival insurgent groups could use violence to try to disrupt the poll. The peace process began in the 1990s and doesn't include hardline Islamist factions, including those aligned with the Islamic State group, which are also active in the southern Philippines. The government and MILF hope that a new, stable Bangsamoro will attract investment to a region where brutal poverty and perennial bloodshed has fueled recruitment by radical groups. President Duterte, who also hails from Mindanao, has long backed the creation of an autonomous region for the island's Muslims.
President Duterte urged voters to vote yes for the ratification of the Bangsamoro Organic Law, or BOL, ahead of the plebiscite, which will be conducted on January 21 and February 6. Speaking at a pro-BOL assembly in Cotabato City, Duterte urged voters to use the plebiscite as a peaceful means to finally correct the historical injustice committed against the Bangsamoro people.
Bring genuine peace. Your approval of this law will not only serve as an expression of your desire to end more than half a century of armed struggle in the region. It will also serve as a testament to your determination to bring genuine peace and development in Muslim Mindanao through an autonomous government that truly represents and understands the needs of the people.
The BOL, previously known as the Bangsamoro Basic Law and considered as one of Duterte's biggest legislative achievements, seeks to give the Moro people basic legal tools to chart their own destiny within the country's constitutional framework. The concept of the BOL, previously named Bangsamoro Basic Law, came about after the Philippine government and the Moro Islamic Liberation Front signed a peace deal in March 2014. The MILF is based in Mindanao and is one of the foremost groups fighting for an autonomous region for the Moro people. First founded in 1978 as the Moro National Liberation Front, the group has presence throughout the Bangsamoro region of Mindanao, the Sulu Archipelago, Palawan, and other nearby islands. Historically, the MILF and other Islamic groups have fought using violent means to demand for independence. However, in 2010, the MILF said that it would instead pursue a plan for an autonomous region under the Philippines instead of separation from the country. In 2014, the Philippine government's chief negotiator Miriam Coronel Ferrer and MILF chief negotiator Mohager Iqbal signed a peace agreement in Kuala Lumpur. The peace deal led to the conception of the Bangsamoro state. Stakeholders submitted a document to the Philippines Congress with a detailed plan for the Bangsamoro Autonomous Region to replace the current autonomous region in Muslim Mindanao. The document would spell out the territory it would occupy and details of the BOL. Progress in passing the law in Congress, however, hit a snag in 2015 when the Mama Sapano clash took place. The Mama Sapano clash was a misencounter between the Philippine National Police and MILF rebels that left over 60 people dead. Speaking at the Peace Assembly for BOL ratification, Duterte expressed hope that with the ratification of the BOL, peace and inclusive growth in Mindanao would benefit the entire Philippines.
Together, let us take this opportunity to begin the process of healing, reconciliation, so that one day we can embrace each other as really brother and sister Filipino, with a view of intolerance in all, understanding, and take the new world on its totality.
Meanwhile, the MILF or the front and the government are confident they have struck a much better deal than their predecessors and that it will have the people's support. Here's Front Panel Chairman Ghazali Jaafar.
Please, do not do anything which will tend to divide our people. Bangsamoro issue is all about the legitimate desire of the Bangsamoro people to have a government of their own, a government which is democratic, a government which is not oppressive, a government which does not intimidate.
Monday's plebiscite on the Bangsamoro Organic Law could make or break the decades-old peace process between the national government and the MILF, or the Front, which started out as a secessionist armed movement in the southern island of Mindanao in the late 1970s. If the yes vote wins, the Bangsamoro, which means Moro Nation, will replace the existing autonomous region in Muslim Mindanao, or ARMM, which has been criticized as merely nominal and failed to end the violent conflict that has left at least 150,000 people dead over the past 5 decades. Voters had until 3 p.m. to cast their ballots. On paper, the proposed new Bangsamoro is a more powerful and possibly larger political unit than the ARMM. It will also have its own parliament, some exclusive powers previously held by the government in Manila, and a significantly larger share of local revenues. Above all, it will mean the end of the Front's armed struggle, with the decommissioning of its 35,000 troops and its leaders taking positions in the new civilian government. Splinter groups who have broken away from the Moro rebels could become the biggest spoilers of the peace process. The Bangsamoro Islamic Freedom Fighters, or BIFF, for instance, said it will continue its armed struggle and will not take part in the plebiscite. Other militants with support from foreign extremists want to turn the island into an Islamic caliphate.
MILF will be seated as transition authority for 3 years to the new Bangsamoro Autonomous Region in Muslim Mindanao in the year 2022. This if the yes vote wins. In an Agila Balita interview with Professor Julkipli Wadi of the Institute of Islamic Studies, UP Diliman, also said it's not sure if MILF Vice Chairman for Political Affairs Ghazali Jaafar will still head the transition government should the yes vote wins. He said if Jaafar will head the new government, this will be just an extension of his current position as chairman of the Bangsamoro Transition Commission.
Mata-translate lang yan into Bangsamoro Transition Authority. So kung halimbawa, ang liderato ng MILF ay yung nga, ay si Jaafar ang paupuin nila, so ibig sabihin magtutuloy yung position niya bilang chairman ng BTC at magiging chairman ng BTA. Internal na yan sa liderato ng MILF.
Professor Wadi was also said if a no vote wins, it may be a chaotic time for the whole Bangsamoro region.
Ng Cotabato City, yan yung heartland ng Maguindanao population dahil bago yan naging city, yan ang sinatawag na Cotabato Empire. At dyan din tingin ko, sinurima yung Moro Islamic Liberation Front. Ibig sabihin, medyo kapos sa kontrol o influensya ang MILF dyan sa mismong syudad niya. So, paano niya ipapakita ngayon, may control siya sa ibang mga probinsya at syudad kung mismong Cotabato City ay hindi kayang pamunuan ng Moro Islamic Liberation Front.
Meanwhile, in Cotabato City, tensions preceded the conduct of the plebiscite for the ratification of the Bangsamoro Organic Law. 2 men on a motorcycle threw a fragmentation grenade inside the residential yard of Judge Angelito Rasalan of the Municipal Trial Court in nearby UPI town in Maguindanao on Sunday night. It caused panic in the neighborhood. The grenade incident that rocked the city Sunday night preceded a gun attack on the house of lawyer Omar Sema, a member of the Bangsamoro. Police bomb disposal experts also deactivated on Monday morning a booby trap made up of a fragmentation grenade found along a road leading to the campus of the Rojas Elementary School, which has polling centers. The school campus was open to voters after ordnance disposal experts neutralized the bomb. Meanwhile, the COMELEC ARMM said 72 teachers did not report for their duties due to threats on their lives. On Monday, the COMELEC conducted the plebiscite for the ratification of the BOL. It seeks to create the Bangsamoro Autonomous Region in Muslim Mindanao. The provinces included are Basilan, Lanao del Sur, Maguindanao, Sulu, and Tawi-Tawi, as well as in Cotabato City and Isabela City. Another plebiscite will be held on February 6 in the province of Lanao del Norte, except Iligan City, the municipalities of Alyusan, Carmen, Cabacan, Midsayap, Pikit, and Pigkawayan in the province of North Cotabato, and the 28 barangays to be included in the region.
Manny Pacquiao puts on a masterclass in elite boxing Saturday with a 12-round demolition of Adrian Bronner, defending his welterweight title in his first fight on U.S. soil in 2 years and his first as a 40-year-old. Pacquiao easily won with an impressive display of superior hand speed and destructive power that landed him a unanimous decision victory over the much younger American at the MGM Grand Hotel in Las Vegas. The Filipino star almost knocked Bronner down twice in the 7th and 9th rounds and showed that he can still be a force in the highly competitive division despite turning 40 last month. Pacquiao started the onslaught in the 7th round by hitting the 29-year-old Bronner with a left hook, then immediately doubling it up. Bronner went into a shell mode, absorbing more blows, but managed to hold on to the end of the round. Pacquiao landed his best punch in the 9th with a blistering left on the chin that sent Bronner back pedaling towards the ropes. Pacquiao's best rounds were 7 through 9, but the only blemish on his night was he couldn't get his second knockout in a row.
I can still fight. You see my performance. I can be still aggressive fighter, and I can give my best at the age of 40. I want to push more, but Buboy told me we're ahead of point, so relax. Don't be rushed. Don't be careless. He's waiting for you for a counter punch and a counter punch. So we're ahead of point. So be aggressive, but don't be careless. So that's what we did for this fight.
Bronner seemed content to simply flail away for most of the fight with a slapping jab that hardly connected. Bronner said after the fight he was pleased with his performance and disagreed with the scoring.
If you ask me, I feel like I won the fight. I'm not about to sit here. I'm not about to sit here and with a sad face, you know. I'm all right. I'm all right, and I will be back, and I will be champion again.
Immediately after the fight, Pacquiao called out Mayweather, tell him to come back to the ring, and we will fight, Pacquiao said. I am willing to fight against Floyd Mayweather if he is willing to come back in boxing. Mayweather, who helped promote Saturday's boxing card, was non-committal when asked if he would get back in the ring with Pacquiao. He said, right now I am living the happy life.
And the news continues here at Eagle News International. We'll be right back. Stay tuned.
Tungkulin ng MTRCV ang mag-provide na appropriate ratings sa lahat ng TV shows. Para ugaliin ng pamilya ang responsableng panonood. Teamwork tayo, parents!
Rated G, good for all. Oops, rated PG.
Dapat may mga magulang para sagutin ang mga tanong ng kabataan.
Grabe, rated SPG, maselan!
Higpitan ang paggabay.
Pag rated MTRCV, rated responsable.
Hey guys, I'm here today in my home state, Jersey City, New Jersey. Make sure you tune into Digital Nest every Tuesday and Thursday at 7:30 p.m. I'm Ace and I'm 1 with 25.
Israel struck what it said were Iranian targets in Syria early Monday in response to rocket fire it blamed on Iran, sparking concerns of an escalation after a monitor reported 11 fighters killed. Israel openly claimed responsibility for the strikes against facilities it said belong to the Iranian Revolutionary Guard's Quds Force, continuing its recent practice of speaking more openly about such raids. It said the strikes were in response to a surface-to-surface rocket the Quds Force fired from Syria at the Golan Heights on Sunday, which Israeli air defenses intercepted. Israel's interception of the rocket on Sunday came after Damascus accused Israel of carrying out air raids in the country's south. And Israel announced its strikes early Monday. Syrian state news agency Sana said its country's air defense systems had responded to enemy fire. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu last week acknowledged an Israeli attack on what he called an Iranian arms cache in Syria, where Tehran provides Damascus with vital support. He told his cabinet Israel had carried out hundreds of attacks over the past years of Syria's war to curtail Iran and its ally, Lebanon's Hezbollah. Israel has pledged to stop its main enemy, Iran, from entrenching itself militarily in neighboring Syria.
The Department of Foreign Affairs on Monday issued a new advisory to remaining Filipinos in Syria in the wake of airstrikes and a terror bombing in Damascus. The Philippine Embassy in Damascus urged Filipinos living in the vicinity to stay indoors and avoid unnecessary movements. Several locations in the Syrian capital were subjected to missile strikes, according to the embassy. On Sunday, Damascus was also rocked by a huge explosion on a highway near the southern suburbs. According to state-run Syria Arab News Agency, there is confirmed information about the arrest of a terrorist after the blast. Embassy charged affairs Alex Lamadrid, on the other hand, said none of the 1,000 members of the Filipino community were affected by the two incidents.
To other news now, U.S. President Donald Trump bitterly attacked top Democrat Nancy Pelosi, and she again insisted that he end the government shutdown before border security talks can begin. President Trump lashed out on Twitter a day after Pelosi, Speaker of the House of Representatives, dismissed as a non-starter his offer to extend temporary protection to about 1 million immigrants in return for $5.7 billion for the wall he wants on the Mexican border to fulfill a signature campaign promise. He said, Nancy Pelosi has behaved so irrationally, has gone so far to the left that she has now officially become a radical Democrat. She's so petrified of the lefties in her party that she has lost control. And by the way, clean up the streets in San Francisco. They are disgusting. President Trump on Friday offered temporary protection for people illegally brought to the U.S. as children and other groups of immigrants facing deportation in exchange for funding for his controversial border wall.
In order to build the trust and goodwill necessary to begin real immigration reform, there are two more elements to my plan. Number one is 3 years of legislative relief for 700,000 DACA recipients brought here unlawfully by their parents at a young age many years ago. This extension will give them access to work permits, Social Security numbers, and protection from deportation, most importantly.
The country signed a letter saying they wanted HR.
Meanwhile, Pelosi on Twitter emphasized the need to end the impasse, which has inflicted increasing pain after 1 month, with some government employees having to turn to food banks or local charities to get by. She tweeted, reopen the government, let workers get their paychecks, and then we can discuss how we can come together to protect the border. Hashtag end the shutdown. While Pelosi and other Democrats dismissed Trump's offer, Republicans insisted that it presented actual movement by the president. Vice President Mike Pence, who has been leading the administration's contacts with Congress, said the Senate would put the proposal to a vote as early as Tuesday. He called it a good faith compromise. The planned vote also reflects a shift by Senate Republican leader Mitch McConnell. He insisted previously that he would not take up any shutdown bill unless both Trump and Democratic leaders backed it.
As the U.S. government shutdown drags on to 1 whole month, the effects on federal workers have been taking their toll, from no pay to an increase in bills to a decline in customer service. Eagle News correspondent Alfred Acena spoke with several employees and supporters that recently conducted a unique kind of protest in Hawaii.
What do you think this is important?
Important because we've got to get our workers back. We've got to get federal workers back to work. No employee shall be asked to come to work and not get paid. No employee shall be furloughed because of lapse in government funding. It's about opening up the government, and telling Congress and our president to act and put Americans back to work.
Federal employees here, but also all federal employees. TSA is not government agencies.
The federal government is going into almost a full month of a government shutdown, the longest in the nation's history. And I'm here at Honolulu's Daniel K. Inouye International Airport, where laid off or furloughed employees, union representatives, and even supporters from other agencies and entities are gathered here to conduct a silent march that will start here on one end of the airport and marching all the way to the other side of the terminal. So we're inside the Hawaiian Airlines terminal at this time. The march has just begun, and then I believe we are to exit the facility here in a few seconds. The purpose of this route, according to what I've gathered, is to make themselves known to the tourism industry that even in this time of year in January, it's still relatively busy with the tourists still crowding Hawaiian Airlines and other airline facilities.
Julie, a post office worker as well as a postal union representative, shares the pain of her fellow employees.
But I do believe as a federal worker, when one is injured, one of our brothers or sisters is injured, it does a domino effect to everyone. As the saying goes, injured to one is injured to all. Okay. So it causes a domino effect where it's not affecting our economy, yes, and even people's personal lives. Yes, I would do my best. We have supported, yes, other locals here. Our union did, and personally, I my own self have supported other locals out of my own personal finances. Okay. Because I know what it's like not to have, okay, and to do the struggle.
About to wrap up.
Members of the Department of Defense, or DoD, which makes up roughly 75% of the federal workforce and the second largest industry in Hawaii, are not affected by the shutdown. Yet still, DoD civilian employees like Jamie took her time to help those who are.
So we're just here to help rally for the TSA workers that are being affected today. For us, I represent federal workers in different areas of the Navy, Pearl Harbor, Naval Shipyard, and stuff like that. They're not affected. So the DoD was covered, right, yeah, in this last bill. So we feel for them. It could have been us, right, like all of our workers as well.
And I believe each year is like a nail biter of sorts. We don't know if there's a guarantee, yes, for next year. Is that true?
Every year, yes. We go through this every year.
So we just came from the drop-off area of the departure level of Honolulu's airport, and we are now inside the check-in terminals of the what appears to be the international airlines, international carriers. At this time, you're looking at the line for the airport security to be provided by the Transportation Security Administration, or TSA. And yes, the TSA is affected with the shutdown. However, one of the exceptions is that a lot of its employees are still tasked to provide services, namely the security for the building here, as well as for the flights that are departing and arriving. So that is a big challenge, a big dilemma for some of these employees that are not receiving paychecks. And it's still a very busy day here at Honolulu's International Airport.
As the marchers finally arrived at their destination and made their statements known to the public, some of them had personal messages for President Trump and leaders in Congress.
I said, Donald Trump, grow up. You need to start doing your job and do what you were elected for, and that is to provide for the American public, for the United States. That's what he's there for. not to hold us as hostage.
Well, you know, this is just, you know, not fair to the federal workers that are being affected, and it's all because of dysfunction in Washington, D.C.
Stop using people, man. Stop taking people hostage, you know, for personal gains. It's hurting people. It's really hurting people. 800,000 workers out there. You know, it's just sad. It's sad to see humans taking advantage of humans that are just trying to make things work, man.
Reporting from Honolulu, Hawaii, I'm Alfred Asenas, 1 with 25.
Thank you, Alfred Asenas from our Honolulu Bureau. Meanwhile, British Prime Minister Theresa May unveiled her Brexit Plan B to Parliament on Monday, or will unveil her Plan B to Parliament on Monday, after MP shredded her EU divorce deal, deepening the political gridlock 10 weeks from departure day. Britain will crash out of the European Union on March 29 unless MPs can force a delay or come up with an alternative plan that Brussels is also happy with before the deadline. London and Brussels have spent the best part of 2 years working on the divorce deal, but MPs in Parliament's lower house of Commons comprehensively rejected it on Tuesday. EU leaders have signaled they could alter the agreement if Prime Minister May dropped some of her negotiating red lines. But British media on Monday reported that she would instead attempt to negotiate some changes to the existing agreement. After surviving a Commons confidence vote on Wednesday, May last week reached out to opposition parties to seek a compromise solution, but the talks appear to have fallen through. Jeremy Corbyn, leader of the main opposition Labour Party, stayed away, saying that a no-deal departure must be ruled out first, something Prime Minister May says is impossible.
It's time for us to come together, put the national interest first, and deliver on the referendum. But the deal which I have worked to agree with the European Union was rejected by MPs, and by a large margin. I believe it is my duty to deliver on the British people's instruction to leave the European Union, and I intend to do so. So now MPs have made clear what they don't want. We must all work constructively together to set out what Parliament does want. I am disappointed that the leader of the Labour Party has not so far chosen to take part, but our door remains open.
She seems to be prepared to send the country hurtling towards a cliff edge. To get a deal that can command a majority in Parliament, Theresa May has to ditch the red lines and get serious about proposals for the future. It's clear that her EU deal is now finished. There can be no question of tweaks or sweeteners from Brussels to bring it back to life. The deal that she brought back, all the 500+ pages of it, is quite clearly a dead deal. Last night's offer of talks with party leaders turned out to be simply a stunt, not a serious attempt to engage with a new reality that is needed. But the starting point for any talks about Brexit must be that the threat of a disastrous no-deal outcome is ruled out, taken off the table, and we can talk about the future of the plans that we will put forward and the future relationship with Europe. But take no deal off the table now, please, Prime Minister. If support for Labour's alternative is blocked for party advantage and the country is facing the potential disaster of no deal, our duty will then be to look at other options which we've set out in our conference motion, including that of a public vote.
Northern Ireland police on Monday questioned 4 men over a car bomb linked to a dissident Republican group that has heightened concerns about the risks of Brexit disrupting a hard-won peace in the British province. The bomb detonated at 8:10 p.m. on Saturday outside the courthouse in border city of Derry. Police have said they believe a paramilitary group calling itself the New IRA was behind the blast. Mark Hamilton from the Police Service of Northern Ireland said the New IRA has recently mainly been linked to vigilante incidents, and the bombing was probably the most significant attack in recent years. In 1998, peace deal largely brought an end to 3 decades of sectarian bloodshed between Republican and Unionist paramilitaries as well as British armed forces in Northern Ireland in a period known as the Troubles. Some 3,500 people were killed in the conflict, many at the hands of the Irish Republican Army or IRA. There are concerns the attack could be a sign of paramilitaries seeking to exploit the current political turbulence over the status of Northern Ireland and its border with the Republic of Ireland caused by Brexit.
Meanwhile, Nicaraguan citizens living in Costa Rica took to the streets in a protest against the government of Nicaraguan President Daniel Ortega.
Desgraciadamente nunca pensé que iba a salir de mi patria, tan linda mi Nicaragua, y está robada por un dictador, por un genocida, que el delito más grande en Nicaragua es ser joven y ser opositor.
Que el pueblo de Nicaragua no le tiene miedo, y el pueblo de Nicaragua dice presente, aquí estamos presentes.
Estamos en Costa Rica promoviendo desde acá una marcha y una serie de actividades cívicas para decirle al gobierno de Ortega que ya debe de salir, que pare de una vez por todas los asesinatos, los encarcelamientos injustos.
Since April, Amnesty International said at least 322 people have been killed, the vast majority by government police and their hooded paramilitary allies. Simmering discontent over corruption exploded in April when the government announced cuts to Social Security. An unarmed citizens movement led initially by students reacted with marches to show disdain for Nicaragua's president, Daniel Ortega. The EU on Monday, meanwhile, warned Nicaragua it was ready to impose sanctions over the crisis-hit country's crackdown on media and civil society groups, saying fundamental rights were being abused. The government of President Daniel Ortega has revoked human rights groups' permits, raided the offices of independent media, and thrown out international inspection missions. EU foreign ministers meeting in Brussels condemned the moves, which follow a tough clampdown launched in response to street protests. Rights groups say that since anti-government protests began in Managua in April, more than 320 people have been killed and 600 arrested, while thousands more have fled the country. Last week, a group of young protesters defied a government ban on demonstrations to take to the streets but were rapidly dispersed by police.
Warning against the dangers of widespread fear and mistrust in the planet, the United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres on Friday said he wants to reaffirm the UN as a platform for action to repair broken trust in a broken world.
As we look to the challenges we face, from climate change to migration to terrorism to the downsides of globalization, there is no doubt in my mind that global challenges require global solutions. No country can do it alone. We need today multilateralism more than ever. The best-selling brand in our world today is indeed fear. It gets ratings, it wins votes, it generates clicks. And so I believe the biggest challenge that governments and institutions face today is to show that we care and to mobilize solutions that respond to people's fears and anxieties with answers. But the United States has decided that
The UN chief called for deeper efforts to show that we understand people's anxieties, fears and concerns, and to address the root causes that led people to feel marooned in our rapidly changing world. Following his opening remarks, the Secretary General answered questions from members of press on various issues handled by the UN, including the situation in Venezuela, in Syria, and in the Democratic People's Republic of Korea, the plight of migrants and refugees worldwide, recent uncertainty around the elections in the Democratic Republic of the Congo, as well as UN funding challenges.
There is no doubt in my mind that global challenges require global solutions. No country can do it alone. We need today multilateralism more than ever. The best-selling brand.
Many countries are failing to protect and promote the interests of all their people. That is according to the UN's High Commissioner for Human Rights. In a special meeting of the Human Rights Council in Geneva to review progress on achieving the 17 SDGs by 2030, Michelle Bachelet insisted that overall, quote, we are not on track to meet its ambitious aims.
The 2030 Agenda is a commitment to achieve greater international cooperation for a more equitable international order, but above all is a promise extended to people previously locked out of development, the marginalized, disempowered and excluded communities, the millions of women, children and youth, racial, religious and caste minorities, indigenous people, migrants, persons with disabilities, Roma and the poor. Conflicts are destroying people's lives, hopes, and ability to earn a decent livelihood in the places they were born. 44,400 people are forced to flee their homes every day because of conflict or persecution. Climate change is generating overwhelming environmental disasters, which devastate basic infrastructure and exacerbate tensions and conflict.
At Ms. Bachelet's side, one of her predecessors as UN Rights Chief, Mary Robinson, echoed the need to address widening inequalities, insisting that wealth and opportunities were increasingly concentrating in the hands of the few.
Uneven development progress has contributed to widening inequalities, as the High Commissioner mentioned, both between and within countries, with wealth and opportunities increasingly concentrated in the hands of the few. These rising inequalities create winners and losers, catalyze social unrest, deepen divides, and increase xenophobia, all major concerns for the realization of rights. When dams flood the ancestral lands of indigenous peoples, mining pollutes local water supplies, and infrastructure projects displace impoverished communities, development efforts are being prioritized at the expense of the realization of human rights for all. Governments in many parts of the world are failing to provide essential services, including access to healthcare, education, quality housing, sanitation or drinking water, with little accountability. Populations are routinely denied access to information and justice. This must change. Human rights norms and institutions constitute a bulwark against incoherent and unequal progress towards the SDGs and should be used as such. I urge all states and other actors to make use of the synergies between human rights and the 2030 Agenda by integrating development reporting with human rights reporting and by working closely with rights holders, national human rights institutions and equality bodies to ensure transparent and effective approaches.
An unusual set of celestial circumstances came together over Sunday night, and the wee hours of Monday for sky watchers in Europe, Africa, and the Americas, where the moon was fully obscured before lighting up again with a faint red glow. The eclipse lasted about 3 hours. During the first hour, the full moon was gradually swallowed up by the shadow of the Earth. Then an hour of total eclipse where it was not invisible but instead appeared tinted in hues of red, orange and pink, followed finally by its full re-emergence bright and shining. A full moon appeared bigger than normal because it was closer to the Earth about 222,000 miles away, earning it the nickname Supermoon. Other monikers include a wolf moon, a traditional way of coining an eclipse in the month of January, and a blood moon because of its rusty red color. Hence the name for this year's event, a super blood wolf moon. At its peak, where night skies were clear of clouds, Venus and Jupiter shone brightly in the night sky.
Meanwhile, here's a total lunar eclipse as seen from Argentina. Take a look.
We'll be back with more news right after this break.
Subaybayan ang mas pinalakasang saganang mamamayan. Lunes hanggang Biyernes, alas 8 hanggang alas 9 ng umaga.
ASEAN in Focus, Monday to Friday, 2 to 2:30 p.m.
An economist from IHS Market projects that the Philippine economy likely grew by 6.2% in 2018. In an email, IHS Market Chief Economist for Asia Pacific, Rajiv Biswas, said if the 6% mark for gross domestic product or GDP growth was breached last year, it would mean that the Philippines posted its 7th year of economic growth of 6% or above. The 6.2% GDP growth outlook in 2018 is lower than the 6.7% growth in 2017. Biswas said the pace of economic growth in 2018 was dampened by the slowdown in export growth and widening trade deficit, as well as the impact of rising interest rates as the BSP or Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas significantly tightened policy rates during 2018 to address rising inflation pressures. For 2019, the IHS economist has forecast that the country's GDP will rise by 6%, slower than last year's growth due to global headwinds. The headwinds include the impact of the U.S.-China trade war, the slowdown in global electronics, new orders, as well as the weakening pace of economic growth in the EU or European Union, which remains an important export market, accounting for around 14% of total Philippine merchandise exports.
The Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas and the International Monetary Fund are co-hosting the inaugural Regional Dialogue on Financial Stability for ASEAN Central Banks on January 21 to 22 at the Philippine International Convention Center with the theme Ensuring Financial Stability in the Region, Some Policy and Practical Issues. Structured as a regional dialogue, the event brings together governors and other high-level officials from ASEAN member states, the BSP said in a statement. Also participating are experts from the IMF, the World Bank, the Bank for International Settlements, and the Southeast Asian Central Bank's Research and Training Center, as well as bank CEOs and other government officials working in the area of financial stability.
If you take a look at the ASEAN Economic Community Blueprint for 2025, financial stability is one of those objectives that we have to meet. Malaking bagay na ating intindihin na ang objective nito is improvement of financial well-being. So that means I'm able to deposit, that means I'm able to withdraw, I'm able to transfer money, I'm always able to pay my bills. So whatever the financial transactions may be, the financial market must be ready to do so.
The first day features a governor's panel where ASEAN integration benefits are carefully weighed against potential financial instability risks. Ensuing sessions focus on the nexus of monetary policy and banking supervision with FS and the potential synergies and trade-offs between financial literacy and FS. The Financial Stability Network for Regional Peers, or FS Network, will also be established as a valuable platform for future engagements among FS peers on systemic risk concerns.
Meanwhile, official data showed Monday the Chinese economy grew at its slowest pace in almost 3 decades in 2018, losing more steam in the last quarter as it battles a massive debt pile and a U.S. trade war. The 6.6% growth comes in above the official target of around 6.5%, but is down from the 6.8% chalked up in 2017. According to the National Bureau of Statistics. And in a sign of struggle, Beijing faces growth in the last 3 months of the year, clocked in at 6.4%, matching a low seen during the global financial crisis 10 years ago, with economists widely expecting the slowdown to deepen. The slowing growth prompted Premier Li Keqiang last week to vow the government would not let the economy fall off a cliff. Relations with top-rated trading partner, the U.S., deteriorated sharply last year after President Trump hit roughly half of Chinese imports with new tariffs in an attempt to force trade concessions.
所以说到这个经贸摩擦，不仅是对中美两国的经济是吧有影响，对全球经济都有影响，是吧？我们克服了，总体上是克服这个影响，我们再继续前进。但是中美经济啊，合则两利，斗则两败，合则多赢，是吧？世界各国都受益，是吧？斗则多输。2019年呢，我国经济危中有机，是吧？稳中趋进，有基础、有条件、有信心、有能力保持经济运行啊，总体处于合理区间，实现经济的持续健康发展。其中，制造业投入。
In boxing, in his first fight on U.S. soil since 2016 and his first fight as a 40-year-old, Manny Pacquiao cruised to a unanimous decision victory over Adrian Broner at the MGM Grand Las Vegas to retain his secondary WBA welterweight title. Using aggression and quickness, Pacquiao outclassed the younger Broner, who sat back in an attempt to counter but threw hardly any punches and landed even fewer. In the ring after the bout, Pacquiao said he was willing to fight Floyd Mayweather, who was sitting ringside for the fight, and chatted with Pacquiao in his locker room before the bout.
If he want to come up from the retirement, then announce it and challenge me. I mean, I'm a champion, and I don't pick any opponent. It depends on, I'm just waiting who will challenge me.
In the early rounds, Pacquiao came out firing, charging at Broner again and again with jabs and flurries to the body. Pacquiao snapped out over 70 jabs in the first 3 rounds, cruising to easy win as he avoided Bronner's rare attempts at counters. The man from Cincinnati decalled the problem bounced back in the 4th round, landing his best shots of the fight on the counter, but he just couldn't land consistently. Pacquiao surged in the middle rounds, landing a big left to the body in the 5th round, then taking over in the 7th. He rocked Bronner on multiple occasions and had him in trouble against the ropes, but wasn't able to get him out of there. Then in the 9th, Pacquiao found success again with his left hand, crushing Bronner with a stiff short right to his face. From there, he cruised through the final few rounds as Bronner got on his bike. Perhaps he was just too hurt from the constant punishment Pacquiao was dealing out, or maybe truly believed he won the bout. He certainly said as much in the ring afterwards.
If you ask me, I feel like I won the fight.
And these are the stories for EN Sports. I'm Ben Bernaldez, and I'm 1 with 25.
Thanks, Ben.
Thanks, Ben. Don't forget to like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter and Tumblr. Also check out our boards and Pinterest and pictures on Instagram. I'm Sam Cepeda. Thanks for joining us.
And that's it for tonight's broadcast of Alma Angeles, and
we're 1 with 25.